land is definitely history. The land is living.
We're taught that we come from here, we go back through here.
You respect the land will give you back tenfold.
You look at it and you think it's desert. What can survive?
Desert isn't a wasteland. It's beauty.
You know, we at the state of California have very high renewable energy goals.
I think that we're going to see a lot more solar and wind development.
We're not against solar, but what does it do to our lands, our natural habitat?
There's not a perfect energy project anywhere. There's always an impact.
You know, if you think about it, I wouldn't build my teepee in the middle of your backyard, would I?
Creator gave us all these as gifts. We are to take care of that. We are caretakers of these places.
We sacrificed our lands already, and we can't sacrifice anymore.
We belong to the land. And so places to us, when we talk about sacred places, it's a physical place.
All of nature, that's us. You cannot take us out of what you might think that is just the desert.
Humans have long occupied the lands ranging from the Colorado River to the San Gabriel Mountains. Today, many Native American tribes continue to call these deserts home.
But it's evident in our clan songs, it's evident in the trails that are here today, left by our people, by the petroglyphs, by the ahmos and the matates, that we've been here for time immemorial.
We weren't placed here, we brought ourselves here.
We've lived here since time of immemorial, the beginning of time. We came from a mountain, out of the mountain called the Vikome. And we had a father named Mustam Ho who created us, man, and the elements of the world.
Kamat created the Colorado River. He went and he swerved his staff into the ground 4 times until it finally pierced and went down deep. And then when he did that, he drug it all the way down and it created the Colorado River.
Our creation story goes that Monument Peak, Avikorotat, is where Creator put his staff, and that staff was to symbolize, you know, whatever part of the land you're on, if you can see that staff, you're still on your land. As far as you go, or as far as you can see the staff, is where you can call home.
The first people that occupied this region developed beautiful, complex cultures and traditions. Remaining constant across hundreds of generations, their sacred songs tell the stories of the people, the land, and of life and death.
So the songs and the land go hand in hand. The songs are our oral tradition, our oral history. So those songs are sung in a cycle, and that cycle starts at sundown and ends at sunrise.
And all the songs talked about the way of life and the way our history is, and talking about the birds, the plants, the animals, the way you're going and how it's going to be. And
it tells about the mountains. It tells about the trails. It tells you where the food's at, where the water's at. How do you survive? And that's our way of life, our bird songs.
Kasi hui tu man. Ayam pedi nangka kay magunup. Here sing salt, creator of the spirits. And the song goes, they flow and they tell about the land, about our connection with it, culturally, spiritually. And we're the people of the earth.
But settlement, industry, and climate change have altered and depleted many resources once so abundant. Burning fossil fuel has contributed to increased weather extremes, longer and drier droughts, and stronger storms and floods. Cities are also growing, extending and amplifying the environmental impacts of huge populations well beyond urban boundaries. Yet the demand for energy is not going away. Harvesting energy from the sun is something people have done for millennia. Now, with modern innovations and technology, renewable energy has become the viable and sustainable way to meet our energy needs. The challenge now is to scale up in a responsible way and to scale up fast.
California is and remains a leader on climate and renewable energy policy.
Renewable energy in California is going to be the way that we're going to be able to meet our climate goals. Fossil fuel production of energy is what's really driving climate change, and we need to get off the fossil fuels into something renewable.
And we're going to need to build projects to meet those goals, not just in the desert. We'll build projects up and down the state, and we'll build them on rooftops.
Solar, wind, geothermal, hydro, those types of energies don't produce greenhouse gases in their general operations, and so therefore have a whole lot better impact on us environmentally.
Solar energy and wind energy and renewable energy is kind of here to stay. You know, we need to embrace it. We need to work together to, combat climate change, and we feel like this is one way to do that.
The Energy Commission played a major role in permitting some of the large renewable energy projects that came forward in 2008, 2009, 2010, and beyond, and really started to put the state on a track to meet its renewable energy goals.
The real driver to come to California was the renewable portfolio standards that the state government actually put on the local utilities here in California.
The American Reinvestment and Recovery Act, passed in 2009, was designed in part to prevent the national economy from collapsing by offering financial incentives to build or repair infrastructure across the United States. At least a third of the most significant projects the Act made possible were dedicated to renewable energy. These projects were fast-tracked. This limited the time available for licensing agencies such as the California Energy Commission and the Federal Bureau of Land Management to survey and approve the numerous projects proposed. Several of NextEra's solar projects were among them, including Genesis.
The ERA fast tracking actually was more, in my mind, something where they just tried to keep the government moving.
That project was fast-tracked because it needed to be done. According to the president, it needed to be done.
The Genesis solar facility sits on approximately 3 square miles of land owned and managed by the Bureau of Land Management in the Chuckwalla Valley near the Ford Dry Lake Basin.
So developing a renewable energy project and a solar project, especially one that takes up thousands of acres, actually takes years to do before construction would begin on a project. We start off by, picking an area that is desirable from the sunlight perspective, as everybody would think. It actually needs to be in not a very remote area because we take a lot of deliveries of equipment. One of the first things we do too is we choose large contiguous land areas since we can't break up the project into too many pieces. And the federal land that's out here in Eastern California is sort of ideal for that because it's large blocks, thousands of acres together.
The Chuckwalla Valley and the Ford Dry Lake area met each of these requirements for NextEra. It is a vast, nearly flat basin close to the Interstate 10 corridor and is bathed in sunlight for most of the year. But there is more to the Ford Dry Lake area than just its potential for collecting solar energy. It was and remains a complex cultural crossroad for many Native Americans. Ford Dry Lake wasn't always dry. It once was both full of water and full of life.
These are not just wastelands devoid of history, devoid of past human activity.
It was a lake. Imagine that, a lake just surrounded by native families.
That valley is very important to us.
Our people traveled and lived in the Chuckwalla Valley.
This was a place where multiple tribes, multiple linguistic groups would have made use of the resources here.
We knew how to hunt, we knew how to traverse the desert, we knew where the water sources were.
You know, the plants are medicine to us. They make that mesquite and use it as cradle boards, and they rock us in it, they tie us in it and rock us, and when we pass, we are cremated with a mesquite tree.
And this is actually the part of California where we have the most evidence for really long trade routes.
So all these areas are really significant to the tribes, and they occupy these areas for a way of life, a way of living. This is where they all migrated, traded, traveled through.
So we traveled from the north to the south, to the east to the west. It's all our territory from the beginning.
The Chuckwalla area has direct ties to the spiritual, cultural reverence of Mojave people's religious belief.
The regulatory environment, especially here in California, is pretty strict. There's obviously a lot of federal rules and state rules and even local rules that we need to follow as a company.
So these laws require that different construction projects be aware of their potential impact on cultural resources. So this includes things like rock art sites and very visible, obvious archaeological sites, but even things like scatters of stone tools are really important. These are cultural resources as well, and these can actually tell us a lot about the past.
You can walk out there today and see cultural resources scattered around the ground. And with Genesis, we were careful to look for those and then try to site the project away from where cultural resources were apparent.
Frequently, federal and state laws can require that tribal monitors be present for construction projects on public lands. This is to ensure that cultural resources can be identified and moved safely away from harm. At the Genesis Solar Project, tribes anticipated and later witnessed artifacts being uncovered during construction. The tribes did their best to make the project avoid them, but they were ignored. In the end, over 3,000 intact and damaged artifacts were unearthed.
Modern mankind tried to develop a way where what they developed there wouldn't impact it. But this earth, this Mother Earth said, no, you're going to take a look at what you really impacted, and it's here.
When they unearthed from that lake and found all that, they weren't just about artifacts. They were about a people. It was horrific pain that hit personally as well.
When you damage something like that, it's damaged, you can't replace it. It's irreplaceable. And when we say it's priceless.
These are really limited resources. We only have so many of these left. So if we're not careful and we let these be destroyed, we will never get them back.
But the people that it impacted live here. People that it impacted have connections and stories and songs that follow that Coco Maricopa Trail that runs right adjacent to that. The people that are benefiting are in Los Angeles.
I used to think it was free. Now there's a cost to it. There's a cost to our land. There's a cost to us as Indigenous people because those artifacts are being disturbed, and those artifacts belong to the ancestors that have gone on before me. And just like our ancestors, those artifacts too were once living and still can be seen as a living object. It's just like going to a grave site and disturbing those who are resting. We're for, a cleaner energy. And as Indigenous people, that's what we've always been about, is cleaner energy.
Hey, we don't say anything that they shouldn't build a solar. They should do it right.
What we wanted was responsible progress.
I really feel that it was the fast tracking that caused the agencies to overlook adequate consultation.
They were in so high demand to get this solar project going.
There was a sense of crisis. Something had to be done. So let's bypass all the protocol and policy that is etched into the Bureau of Land Management requirements and get this fast track through.
On the Genesis projects, the tribes were originally excluded from any of the original interactions. We as a company actually did not go and introduce our project or introduce ourselves to the tribe.
Tribes were left out. They were left out of discussions and consultations of times when they should have been brought in because they possess a unique knowledge and expertise of their traditional tribal area, their traditional areas.
We let the federal government handle that in the government-to-government consultation and sort of took a back seat to that. And we've now recognized that that is a wrong approach.
They learn by mistakes, and this was a big mistake to us, a slap in the face in what happened to us in our Blythe area.
We said, you gotta follow your own law, and you're not following your law.
Your laws that you brought here forced us to follow. If we have to follow them, you have to follow them too.
As tribes, we're tired of that. We're tired of being overlooked. We're tired of not sitting at the table.
I guess the first lesson I think we learned is you can't just write a letter and expect a response. You actually go and you need to contact and shake the hands of and meet folks, talk to them on the phone, whatever it might take to kind of earn a little bit of trust.
Treat those tribes as people, as beings. Respect their ways and honor their traditional ways.
Don't wait till the last minute to include tribes in your project. Come to us first.
When it comes to these solar projects here in the desert, what we want is we want to be right there with them, working side by side to ensure that they can still have their projects, be successful. Meanwhile, our sacred sites being protected and our artifacts being protected and not disturbed.
But when it came to building the Genesis Solar Project, that was not the case. Instead, in an effort to fast-track the project, tribal advice that should have been followed was swept aside. This led to a tough decision. what to do with the area and the artifacts that were unearthed or damaged.
You know, we were asked to, re-engineer the project. We did take a look at that. We were asked to move the project, and we did take a look at that also. It wasn't feasible, really, from a cost perspective or an engineering perspective.
But sometimes there's just no way to prevent an archaeological site being destroyed by construction activities. So in that case, you try to mitigate the damage as much as you can and try to collect as much data as possible.
At the Genesis project, we actually collected cultural resources, and they actually ended up being shipped off-site and stored at a local museum. We've come to realize now that that was probably not the best approach.
What would that archaeologist do with what he just dug up? Would he give it to a museum? The best thing to do is give it back to the tribe who was in the area.
Well, you took our footprint. You took our metates, you took our 3,000 artifacts, and you put them in a warehouse or you put them in a museum. How are we to prove who we are and that our presence was there?
They think taking and removing it and putting it into solid walls and shells and such is the way to keep it safe. It was already safe. It was already protected. It already was the way in which the people wanted it to remain.
But the law says once you take it out of the ground, it becomes the owner of the United States government.
They need to come home because they were put in that ground for a reason, and they need to go back in those areas.
We have fought tooth and nail since day one to avoid impacts to resources, and when they cannot be avoided, we have pushed for on-site reburial.
Now, I would have felt comfortable pretty much if they did take the artifacts and put them in a central location out here, which the tribe picked.
We don't win all the time. We aren't able to save everything, but there are limitations and there are things that the tribe is more than willing to fight tooth and nail to preserve.
Even though the tribes have not yet won the battle to keep their cultural artifacts in the Chuckwalla Valley, they haven't lost their resolve. Many of the tribes had already been successful at saving some of their sacred places from the threats of constant development. In places like Ward Valley, California, they fought hard at keeping a nuclear waste site off of sacred land 20 years ago, and succeeded. They still have an unwavering desire to keep their cultural resources from being destroyed.
Well, we're in the Ward Valley in the Mojave Desert. We're 20 miles west of Niles, California, and the Colorado River. So we're here to celebrate the 21st anniversary of our victory at the Ward Valley. And we fought this for 15 years.
It was permitted and cited, and we turned it around and we won the battle and kept it out. People gave their hearts. It's the power of the people.
The energy they had, they gave for you and me. They sacrificed.
And it was really important to impress upon the younger generation the need to protect the land. We don't want to see the desert become a wasteland and unuseful, unproductive. It's here for the people, and it's here for your beauty, it's here for you to enjoy and to live and sustain yourself.
Tribes in Southern California had won a huge victory in the battle to save their sacred places at Ward Valley. But their struggle to be respected and heard is not over yet.
If you ask me about the Genesis Solar Company, did it take from us? It did. Did it give back? It sure did, because it resurrected our people's cultural religious belief to teach our children for the next 7 generations who we are.
But we draw from the mountain, we draw the strength from the river, we draw the strength from the land, and we persevere on.
And you have to take care of everything that's out here just because it's a part, you're a part of it, and it's a part of you.
This is our land base. This is who we are, so we have to step up.
We're getting stronger. We're getting stronger in our policies. We're getting stronger, Colorado River Indian tribes, and taking a stance and saying, no more. No more. No more of this.
During the 10 years since Genesis was approved, the Bureau of Land Management and the California Energy Commission have worked together with tribes to write the Desert Renewable Energy Conservation Plan. It contains regulations that protect both sacred sites and tribal values. No longer relying on federal agencies for consultation, the California Energy Commission has combined efforts with tribes to research, survey, and document the Chuckwalla Valley cultural landscape. State agency consultation with tribes is now required by law. Prior to approval, projects must obtain tribal advice on where they should be sited, and more importantly, where projects should not be sited. Because of these efforts, tribes now have a stronger role in protecting their sacred land.